Hello folks, the last time we saw any major new additions to World of Warcraft's open world content was in Legion, with the introduction of World Quests. Over the following expansions, I think it's not being unfair to say that World Quests have suffered a bit of a managed decline, going from Legion and BFA, where new quests would spawn every 6 hours, through to today, with the most recent zone of Koresh only having new quest content spawning twice a week. Of course, in the meantime, there have been other changes to the open world content, including the introduction of the open world event system, along with instance content aimed at open world players like the Awakening the Machine event and arguably even Delves. However, none of these have served to stem, at least for me, that feeling of a continued slow regression in the max level open world content ever since the end of BFA. And it appears that this is on the radar of the World of Warcraft dev team, as Legion Remix has brought with it a couple of pretty major new additions to the open world content lineup. And with more to come in MIndight, I think that this is only the beginning. The first of those new Legion features is of course the Infinite Research system. This is essentially a supercharged daily version of the weekly Call of the World Soul quest, which offers us a choice of different activities to do. Unlike the Call of the World Soul, which has a very small and narrow pool of activities, the World Soul research system has had a surprisingly deep selection of things to do, which includes not just the usual quest to do X quests, but options such as rare farming, elite farming, gathering, doing storyline chapters, you name it, and it's in that pool. But as well as that simple choice of 4 different activities to do, the system is also offering another overarching choice, where we can tell the game what type of content we prefer, allowing it to tailor those 4 choices much closer to our preferences, with options including open world, questing, dungeons, and even raiding. What this system serves to do is to fill a bit of the void that I think was left by the removal of the Legion and BFA emissary system, which applied a layer of structure to the open world questing, effectively saying to us as players that we don't have to do everything on the map, we can just do a subset and get 95% of the rewards that way. The only downside of the emissary system was that it was basically the same every day, just go and do 4 world quests, whereas with Infinite Research, you never quite know what you'll be doing next, something that serves to add a lot more texture and variety to our gameplay. Now, of course, there is a little bit of an irony that this is first being tested in content that still has the emissary system active, but that in many ways does serve to make it easier for us to compare. Now, of course, Legion Remix is a limited time event that is completely separate from the main live game for sure, but this does have the advantage that it is able to serve as a bit of a testing ground for new ideas, and I do find myself wondering if this Infinite Research system might well be one of those experiments that we'll be seeing in live real soon now. And of course, it isn't the only experiment that's going on in Legion Remix's open world, as we're also getting the addition of another idea from Diablo with the heroic world tier. One of the most common complaints about open world content, albeit I suspect mainly coming from people who don't currently enjoy the open world, is a lack of difficulty. And that complaint isn't without merit. Outside of the very occasional wanted quests during leveling, there really isn't much to seriously threaten our player characters. Sure, we'll occasionally overpull or run into a max level elite rare and suffer a grisly fate, and Cloth DPS can occasionally find an overtuned named quest mob that gives them a bit of a rough time, but for the majority of us, we can just rampage through the open world like the unstoppable god-killing heroes that we are in the game's lore. And of course, at max level, after maybe 1 or 2 weeks of gearing up, even those clothies are soloing those 3-man quests and elite rares, with the only punishment for doing so being that it might take them more than a minute to defeat them. In recent expansions, the WoW team have tried addressing this with harder elite areas, such as the Northern Sands in Zereth Mortis, the Cobalt Academy in Dragonflight, or the Jardin area in the Zaralik Caverns. But honestly, I don't think any of those particular attempts were very successful with the player base. The Heroic World tier in Legion tries to take a similar approach, but applying that harder difficulty to the entire open world, along with being an opt-in system, which allows the team to lean much harder into that higher difficulty. Unfortunately for me, the Legion version for the most part has exactly the same issue as those harder areas in recent expansions, in that it is achieving that difficulty simply by increasing enemy health and the damage NPCs do, but without adding any fresh mechanics. The outcome of this is that if your character isn't strong enough to defeat its targets, there really isn't much you can do about it, beyond going away and getting better gear. And once you can defeat the enemies, they tend to turn into damage sponges, whose defining feature is how long they take to kill. And that means that, especially if you're a tank, the only real challenge ends up being not dying of boredom. What this ultimately means, of course, is that there's only really one reason to do that harder difficulty, and that's for the better rewards. But of course, that means that those rewards have to be worth the extra time that you spend defeating the enemies. And in Legion Remix, at least in Phase 1, the Heroic World tier does have some major tuning issues, which for the most part is resulting in a lot of players opting out of that Heroic tier. But that does not mean that this approach does not have some potential. In my personal view, the missing seasoning, so to speak, is in the mechanics. If instead of it being a simple copy of normal with just more health and NPC damage, the Heroic tier was built as a distinct experience with additional mechanics such as Kiss Curse mechanics, unique targets, and fewer but more mechanically involved NPCs, it could have a lot of potential. My own concern at the moment though is that Blizzard might end up learning the wrong lessons from this experience in Legion Remix. Now, there currently aren't any announced plans for an actual Heroic World tier in MIndight, and if such a thing emerged, I think it would be in a 0.1 or 0.2 patch, but that does not mean that the open world in MIndight is going back to business as usual. In fact, MIndight is the first time since Shadowlands that an initial reveal has included the announcement of some changes to the open world, with a brand new prey system, along with a set of zone-specific new features, and more recently, the new Arcrantina feature. The prey system in many ways sounds like the mechanical sauce that was missing from Remix's Heroic World tier. It is an opt-in challenge with 3 difficulty levels and sees you being assigned a target to track down. But unlike the regular quests that we're used to, this target doesn't just hang out at a specific spawn point on the map waiting for you. Instead, the hunter is going to become the hunted, with the potential that our target might just turn up and attack us first, more likely or not at a difficult time for us, something that has the potential to add a new layer of unpredictability and tension to our open world experience, similar to how in Delves we have to live with the possibility of the Delves challenge boss, Nexus Princess Kiveza, turning up and giving us a very bad time. And of course, on top of that is going to be the challenge of getting to our prey first. And if you do choose one of those harder difficulties, then as well as no doubt that target getting stronger, we're also going to be unleashing a new layer of mechanics called Torments, which empower not just our enemy, but the rest of our open world experience. Sound familiar? The Torments themselves will be a mixture of affix-like mechanics, be it pools spawning under us in combat or enemies being bolstered, combined with some Eye of the Jailer-like systems that get progressively harder the longer we take to find our target. How well this will work in practice, of course, does remain to be seen. The max level testing isn't at the time I recorded this video available in the alpha yet, but it is going to be very different to what we've been used to in the open world. And the dev team are not stopping with just one new feature. The Arcrantina is a new alternate player hub, taking the form of a massive neutral tavern in a pocket dimension, which will provide both a new social place for players to gather, but will also see the arrival of groups of NPCs seeking their help across not just the zones of MIndight, but also taking us out into the older zones as well. Beyond farming old mounts and transmog, at max level we are very rarely given much reason to go and visit the wider world of Azeroth beyond that of the current patch. Each of these features on their own do have the potential to be the biggest new additions to the open world since Legion, and these are set to be in addition to all the usual open world lineup, with each of the 4 new zones set to get their own new open world event based activities too. In Eversong Woods, we'll get Silvermoon Court, which will see us having to balance our reputation with 4 of Silvermoon's military factions. According to Blizzard, this is going to be a callback to Burning Crusades Alders versus Scryers, which does make me think that rather than the Undermine system of rotating weekly to get all of those 4 reputations to Exalted, we may have to make some much more strategic choices. In Zulaman, the events are going to be very much profession themed, with Abundance seeing us collecting materials for the Lore of Abundance in order to progress crafting themed activities, and the Amani Abyss will be a diving based spearfishing event. In the underground Harandar zone, Legends of the Haranir will see us using magical paintings to access what will be described as lore-rich journeys, something that I think might be quite popular with folks who like questing. And in the final Void Storm area, the Stormarian Assault sees us protect the Void Elves as they purge Stormarian Citadel of Void anomalies in an event that very much sounds to me like a callback to the siege on Dragonbane Keep. Now, the Dragonflight and War Within open world events have, I will admit, been a bit of a mixed bag, covering the entire spectrum from the Awakening the Machine all the way to the heights of Time Rifts. And I am sure that these events will be no different in that respect, but at the same time they do sound pretty interesting, and I'm certainly keeping my fingers crossed that they will all end up landing well. And it's not just the max level content that is seeing some major changes. The leveling experience is also getting a bit of a shake-up, with the tentative return of the more old-school World of Warcraft approach of leveling through multiple expansions. In MIndight, while the journey to reach level 70 will for new players be much as it is now, defaulting to Dragonflight, players will then progress through a streamlined version of the War Within and then into the MIndight content. And for returning and existing players, the 10 to 70 experience can be replaced with a brand new system that will see us setting out from the Arathi Highlands. Historically, the World of Warcraft leveling experience has been a bit scuffed, as we would end up jumping from expansion to expansion as we hit various level gates, never actually managing to finish any of the main storylines. The result, of course, was a completely incoherent experience from a narrative perspective, and while the Shadowlands changes did try to address that, beyond removing the need to jump from continent to continent every 10 levels, it shared much the same issue in that you were never allowed to actually finish any of the stories. For MIndight though, all of the leveling phases are getting fully reworked to make them a much better fit into their allotted level ranges and give players access to the full storylines, offering a major shift in leveling that is a long time coming. And as well as giving new and returning players a much better introduction to the game, I do think it has the potential to give us older hands a better experience as we level up our alts. No matter what though, it is very clear that the World of Warcraft team are making a pretty major effort in the open world experience across the board, which of course will be combining with the launch of player housing to hopefully significantly expand the range of gameplay options that we'll have to partake in the open world. It was the open world of Azeroth that caused me to fall in love with World of Warcraft within a couple of hours of starting to play. And despite eventually graduating to raiding a Mythic Plus, for me it's the open world that is the true beating heart of the game, and it is the thing that has kept me here all of these years. So it's great to see the World of Warcraft dev team taking what are some pretty major swings at revitalising that experience. But what about all of you? Are you an open world fan? And if not, what would it take to get you back out there onto the surface of Azeroth? Let me know down below. If you found this video preview helpful, entertaining, or even just plain annoying, then let me know by hitting that like icon. And if you want to support my channel to grow and help me to make more of these videos along with my other content, then hit that subscribe button right now before you forget. If you don't want to miss out whenever I release a new video, then as well as subscribing, you can follow me in social media for updates. My links in the description below as well. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.